Okay, Chagiga, Daf Yesterday we ended up Daf Daled with a Mishnah, shifting the focus from the chumras of Kachim over Truma. Now we're going to talk about the opposite, which is certain things that that Truma is more strict than Kachim. So the Mishnah talked about a few different items. We're going to expound upon a few of them in today's daf. The first one being there's a certain kula leniency that if a Ama Aretz, that we trust an Ama Aretz if he brings wine and oil that are kachim to the Beis Hamikdash. We believe him. We don't say that there's something wrong with this oil, that he maybe did something to it. Rather, we trust him. So the Gemara just adds one criteria and says that it kind of depends where he's bringing it from. If he's like the Mishnah specifically says from Yehuda, what does that exclude? It means that if he's coming from the Galil, then we don't believe that the wine and oil is valid. The reason why is because there's a little strip of land, like on the way, where it was like Kusi territory. And the Kusim are people who were sort of coerced to become Jewish, and they were displaced there by Shalmaneser from Ashur, and we don't really, they're of Avodah Zarah. If you pass through that land, then there's no longer like validity. We no longer believe that the Truma and the Kachim, just the Kachim. We no longer believe the Kachim is still valid. That's one. The second kula that we discussed was about Shas Agitos, which means if it's the season where they press olives and they press grapes, if that's the case, then we trust we trust Amei Haaretz to that whatever's in their barrels is valid kachim. And the reason why we trust is because people are typically a lot more careful during the actual season where they're manufacturing the items. So what does the Gemara talk about? Brings another brisa that seems to say, actually, we don't trust Amei Haaretz in that instance. We conclude as saying that brisa that we bring, the second one, is really just talking about an instance where the season has passed and now we have all these barrels. At that point, we no longer trust that these barrels are tahor and that and they have to be dealt with accordingly. The Mishnah says that you can wait until the next season. Is actually the next item of the Mishnah. So it says that if the wine pressing season has passed, that although you can't use those barrels anymore, we don't trust them. Rather, if we wait till the following year, you can use them again, which is really interesting. So Rav Sheshes, just as a side point, tried to prove from this idea. There's a Mishnah in Demai. He tried to link the two. There's a Mishnah in Demai that says that if you inherited a bunch of raw goods from you got as inheritance, you're allowed to say that, okay, I'll take, and let's say there are two sons, one is an Am Haaretz and one is a Chaver, someone who's knowledgeable in halacha, and they inherited a whole bunch of raw goods. So you can say that I'll take half the wheat, you take half the wheat, and we'll split it up that way. But you're not allowed to say that I'll take the wheat, you take the wine, and then we'll divide up afterwards. And there's the explanation is just because you can't there's an explanation tied to how you actually take the truma and meiser off of those items, trumas and kachim, and I'm not gonna dig into it too much, but it's there on Chavhei. The next kula that we talk about is this concept of Hifrashi L'Socha or Revi'as Kodesh, which means if an Am Haaretz has to have his barrel of oil, and a quarter of the oil I've designated to be Kodesh. So I believe him, both on the Kodesh that he's going to bring and the Truma, which is the rest of the wine, of the barrel. We trust both of it. So this also teaches us, says the Gemara, a separate rule with regard to Beis Pras, which is like a large field where we believe there's some bone fragments or whatever, there's some sort of impurity with dead bodies. So we learn in a Mishnah that you are allowed to pass through this field when it comes to bringing Karban Pesach, but you're not allowed to when it comes to bringing Trumos to the Beis Hamikdash. So, and I mean, when we say we trust it, it means you have to there's a way to do it. You walk through, you blow. It's there's a whole process. But at the end of the day, we don't want to prevent you from bringing the Karban Pesach just because you can't get through a field. So we also, and so we learn this idea from our Mishnah, which is like, if by Karban Pesach, which is, which you get, if, I'm just gonna read it here, if you check Beis Pras for Pesach, then you are allowed to eat Truma as well, because we don't want to make it seem like you're holy for, bring the Karban Pesach, but you're not holy for bringing Truma to the Beis Hamikdash. That would kind of make your Karban Pesach seem a little bit less valid. So same too here. And the last part of this daf opens up a new Mishnah, which talks about selling. Basically, we're so careful about the barrels and the jugs that we use to store holy objects. So we need to make sure that those are properly certified. So there's a distinction that says, we obviously can't manufacture all earthenware jugs in Yerushalayim, because I think I learned, I guess, just there's not enough room, first of all, and also second of all, I think they said that they don't want to blacken the walls of Yerushalayim with all these furnaces and these urns. So there's a way that you can live outside of Yerushalayim and still sell earthenware jugs to people who are trying to bring Truma, etc., to the Beis Hamikdash and to Yerushalayim. And there's just a few sort of criteria you need to make. Number one is if you need to be the actual importer. You can't import and then give to someone else. Number two, it must be your pots only. Number three, you must be the one you must have been physically seen bringing the pots into the designated area, which means within Yerushalayim and Modi'in. If you're past Modi'in, you're already too far. So if you meet those criteria, you can be a certified seller of pots, and that will allow people to use your goods to transport their trumos and kachim to the Beis Hamikdash and to Yerushalayim. And tomorrow's daf is going to explain the Gemara.